Welcome to the Wedding Chaplain podcast. My name is David Anderson. We are so glad that you're here with us today. And we have a very special guest today. His name is David Berke, and he started a company a few years ago called eWed Insurance. And it was a fascinating conversation. You think, oh my gosh, insurance, how exciting can insurance be? But it was fascinating. He started the company in 2017, and of course, was perfectly positioned for everything that happened in 2020. And what he wants to share today is a little bit of how he started his business, how he got involved, sort of made a transition. He was a wedding planner for 27 years and then stepped over into the realm of wedding insurance. And one of the things I found just amazing was he knows couples. He knows weddings. He knows how events work. And that has really sort of put him in a prime position to talk about this concept with couples. So please join me for my conversation today with David Berke. Well, we are so excited today to have a very special guest. His name is David Berke, and he is the owner of eWed Insurance, an insurance product for couples who are planning their wedding. And so we're just so glad that he is with us today. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, David, and thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
Oh, we're so excited. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got to this place.
I'm more than happy to. I took a very long and windy road to get here, but it started around 27 years ago as a wedding planner. I got introduced to a gentleman who had an event planning, wedding planning business. And this was, before the time that anyone even knew what a wedding planner was.
Right.
And we co-founded a wedding planning company that did very well for 27 years. And we did weddings, for everyone all over the world, high-end celebrities on up and down from there. And about 4 years ago, I got introduced to the concept of wedding insurance. And I said, wow, that is just something that is really interesting. I had never heard about it. It was not big in the industry. I since learned that it's rather popular in the UK, but it's not wide. It wasn't at the time. It wasn't widely adopted here in the United States. And I looked at the couple of companies that were out there doing it, and I said, they're just not doing a very good job. They don't understand wedding planning. They don't understand wedding couples. They don't understand, how weddings happen in real life. And the insurance didn't speak to that. And I said, you know what? I can do a better job. I spent 2 years talking to over 40 different insurance companies to say, this is what I want to offer, and this is how I want to price it, and this is why it makes sense. And, after a couple of years, I got an insurance company to say, you know what? Okay, let's give it a try. We believe in this. We believe in you. We like what you're having to say. We'll give it a try your way. And it's been a very nice, successful ride since then.
Very cool. So do you have any idea how many couples you have served in those 3, 4, 5 years? Do you have any estimate on how many, not necessarily how many policies, but just how many couples, just a broad ballpark?
I probably should have gone back and done a count before the show to know that.
You're fine. That's a surprise question.
I don't. My guess is we're well north of 10,000 couples right now, or 10,
okay,
right? And we serve, couples and venues and wedding professionals across the United States. This is our third year. We have not been around doing it for, dozens of years, but we're the disruptor in the industry. We're the ones that came in and said, we're going to do wedding insurance the way wedding insurance should be done, not the way it has been done. And the adoption of eWed by couples, wedding professionals, and venues has been tremendous over the last 3 years.
Very good. So I would imagine that you have seen an uptick in 2020. How did 2020 sort of shape how many calls you're getting, your kind of business, things like that?
2020 was, a watershed year for everyone, whether it was good or bad.
Right.
For the wedding insurance industry, it was a horrible year for paying claims because anyone who had bought insurance in 2019 had a COVID claim. COVID was not excluded in 2019 for
Right.
insurance. Late February, early March, just about every not just about every insurance company in the world excluded COVID, but the insurance companies had a big payout for COVID-related claims, and they were really good. They honored the claims that they needed to pay. But what 2020 did more than anything was it increased the awareness across the board for wedding couples that insurance is out there, it's available, things can and do go wrong with weddings. Things happen that are beyond your control, and you can get some protection from wedding insurance.
So what is the difference between the product that you offer and just me having insurance? I mean, or something that I can get from my insurance company? What makes your product something different? Or the misconceptions like, well, I already have insurance. Why do I need to get event insurance? I already have homeowners insurance. I already have, those kinds of things. Talk to us a little bit about what specifically your product's going to do that perhaps people don't know that they need, or they think they already have coverage on something else.
Okay, certainly. There's two types of wedding insurance, but before I go into that, most people have homeowners or renters insurance, and that will cover an event that you're having at your home or that you're having at your apartment or your condo. And the typical thing is if someone hurts themselves and you're responsible in your home, then your insurance will probably pay for that.
Right.
As soon as you go off-site and you're at a park, you're at a beach, or you're at a wedding venue, or you're at a hotel, the insurance doesn't follow you when you leave your home or your apartment. So that is where wedding insurance kicks in. And there's two types of insurance. There's liability insurance, which is the most common, and that's what all venues require these days. They say, hey, you're coming on my property, you're bringing 50, 100, 200 people on my property. If you or any of your guests cause any damage or injury to my property, or if someone leaves drunk, I want to know that you have wedding liability insurance to protect that. Because if after the wedding there's damage or there's an injury, I don't want to have to go chasing after you. I have wedding insurance. It's a venue. I can make a claim on that insurance, and I know I'm covered. The other side of it is cancellation insurance. And I think that's probably not the best name for it because weddings are generally postponed. They're not canceled.
Right. No, if it's canceled, that's a bad thing.
that means something really
They're
bad.
They're going to happen eventually.
Correct. So they call it cancellation postponement insurance, but it's really, the name should be loss of deposit insurance. And what that does is if something unforeseen or unexpected happens that's beyond your control and you lose deposits, it can reimburse you for lost deposits. And I've got a couple of easy scenarios that I've explained that bring it home for people. We had a wedding last year, nothing to do with COVID. The groom was out riding his bike. 2 days before the wedding, he got into a bike accident and broke his ankle. He's fine, but the day of his wedding, he was laying in the hospital with a couple of pins in his leg, and they had to postpone their wedding. 2 days before the wedding, you've paid out 100% of all your money to your vendors. And the vendors, while being very understanding, we didn't do anything wrong. We held this date open for you. Our contract says we get to keep the deposit. We don't want to be the bad guy, but if we give you the money back, we lose the money. People had wedding insurance. It was a win-win for everyone. The vendors got to keep the money that they had bargained for and they were entitled to, and the couple got reimbursed. So that's on the more severe end. Another example is we had
eventually he walked down the aisle, no pun intended. Right?
Correct. Eventually they went back and they basically paid for the wedding twice. The benefit was the insurance company paid once and they paid once.
Right.
Instead of having to pay twice. And there's tons of examples: fires, floods, illness, injury, vendor bankruptcies. We had a case where a band was driving to a wedding and their van broke down. They never showed up to the wedding. Not having a band wasn't great, but they improvised. They had an iPod and somebody had a portable speaker and they put some music on. But they went to the band and said, you never showed up at the wedding. You owe us our money back. And the couple was absolutely correct. And the band said, "We're sorry, we're a band. We don't have very much money, and we used your wedding money to pay for the repairs to our van. We're really sorry, but we don't have the money to give back to you."
Oh, wow.
They made a claim on insurance, and they say, band never refunded the deposit. They were supposed to. Insurance pays off on it. So
Wow.
those types of things. And then you think of the forest fires in Northern California. How many roads were closed because of smoke or fire danger, and you couldn't even get to the venue?
Right. No, listen, it's so, what would you say to the couple that says, well, doesn't the venue have insurance? I have my own personal insurance. Doesn't the venue have insurance? Where's the sort of the misunderstanding or the gap there?
The venue does have insurance. Venues have to have their own liability insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone gets injured at your wedding and it's the venue's fault, that doesn't mean you're not going to get sued. If someone leaves the wedding drunk and the venue served the alcohol and they hit someone else, the person who left drunk is your friend. They were a guest at your wedding. They're going to probably not sue you. But the person they hit, they don't know you. They're going to sue you and they're going to sue the venue. And then the insurance kicks in to defend the suit. It costs you $25,000 in legal fees to prove that you had nothing to do with serving the alcohol that caused the person to leave drunk. Wedding insurance or wedding liability insurance will pay for that. And also, the venue has insurance. And let's say, horrible situation. The day before your wedding, the venue burns down. The venue might very well say, "We're sorry, we burned down. Here's your deposit back." But you know what? The floor, they're not paying you back for the florist. They're not paying you back for the band. They're not paying you back for the honeymoon if you decide to postpone your honeymoon.
Right. So how does COVID-19 sort of fit into all of that? There have been some stories of, obviously if you took out a policy in 2019, you were covered in a COVID situation. Some policies have purposely excluded the COVID-19 out of it. How does the COVID-19 scenario fit into the discussion?
Okay. Well, back in early 2020, insurance companies all realized that COVID was going to be on a pandemic level event, and they excluded it from coverage going forward. Typical insurance says if there's what they call a known circumstance, if you know something might cancel your wedding like COVID, it's not covered, but they've specifically excluded it. And while it's harsh on the wedding couples, think about it from an insurance company's perspective. And I'm an insurance broker. I'm not an insurance company, so I sort of sit in the middle of the two.
Right.
But an insurance company, when they're charging a couple $100 for cancellation insurance, that's only makes sense from a economic or a financial perspective is if they pay out on some of the people that bought policies. As soon as they pay out, $10,000 for everybody that's bought a $200 insurance policy, they'll go out of business. You can't make money for that. The only way an insurance company, can charge a couple $100 for a $10,000 policy is if every single person on that buys the policy doesn't make a claim. It's like any insurance. You look at your auto insurance, your homeowner's insurance. If you have a claim, what you've paid in that year in premiums is a fraction of that claim. And the way the insurance companies can honor that claim is other people don't have claims. So something like COVID, it hit everyone across the United States, and the insurance companies excluded it. Things like an earthquake, a snowstorm, fire, they affect, a large number of people in a certain geographic area, but they don't affect every single policyholder.
Right. So if you're speaking to the couple who's like, well, we're coming out of it. I mean, we're recording this in June of 2021. We're coming out of it. That was a thing to worry about last year, but everything's looking good. What would you say to the couple that's sort of perhaps maybe too overly optimistic and thinking, well, I don't need something like this?
Well, that's where I tell them the story of the bicycle accident, of the forest fire, of the band's van breaking down. That's what the insurance was meant to cover. And I understand insurance is not for everyone. Some people buy trip insurance. Some people don't buy trip insurance. Some people buy life insurance. Some people don't buy life insurance.
Mhm.
The idea is it's not going to be needed by everyone. But the people that do need it are extraordinarily grateful that they did buy it. And then it's looking at cost versus benefit approach. If you're spending $30,000 on your wedding and a $30,000 insurance policy is around $300, that's 1% of your wedding budget. Is it worth it to spend $300 and know that if something goes wrong, it's going to pay you back $30,000? And if nothing goes wrong, you know what? It's only $300.
Okay. You have done, as you said, you have years of event planning, and you've probably done ceremonies all over this country, all over this world, perhaps. What happens when you step outside of the country in terms of your policy? Is this a Cancun? We're going abroad. We're going to Mexico. We're going to somewhere exotic. Is this just the United States thing, or how do I approach that if I'm trying to have something that's outside of the country?
That's a good question. Right now, we are limited to the United States and its territories. And the territories you think of is like Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands. It does not cover outside of the United States. And none of the other companies cover outside the United States either. And the biggest reason for that is the insurance is written based upon U.S. laws. As soon as you go outside of the United States, you're now writing insurance that's supposed to be effective with another country's laws. And you just don't know how that's going to turn out. So it's not available.
Not available. And so tell me a little bit about you. You have an interesting history of the event planning. Tell me some stories of your experience just as an event planner. I mean, obviously it sort of wears you out after a while. Did you have anything humorous or anything that sort of just stood out as I will never forget this event or this wedding? Anything like that without throwing a couple under the bus? But
you know what?
Is there anything that just says, man, I will never forget this? Got interrupted or rained out or something weird happened or something like that.
We've seen rain. We've seen couples fight. We've seen, people no show. We've seen cakes fall over, just about everything you can see. I'm hesitant to tell too many stories because a lot of our clients were high-end celebrities, and I can't do it. But, we did a party on the beach one day. And, a lot of these stories are from early on because, you learn from your mistakes more than anything. We had a party on the beach one day and no one bothered to check the high tide charts.
Oh, gosh. Oh, no.
So needless to say, right before the wedding, we had every waiter there, and we're trying to lift the fully assembled tent up onto the deck to move it. So, you've had cases like that. We've had cases, you learn to check the high tide chart. We did another case where we had a generator. It was a tented wedding, and the generator broke down. We were early in our career. We didn't realize that you should probably always have a backup generator.
Yeah.
So you learn those things. Luckily, the chef was also a mechanic and was able to fix it.
Yeah, that's what you need in a chef. Somebody can do it 2 times. All right, so I'm going to ask you the nightmare scenario, which is a popular trope in movies, is even a movie by this name, The Runaway Bride.
I remember it.
Have you had the runaway, or they didn't show or leave at the altar? And what would your policy do in that scenario?
So we have had the runaway bride. It was an interesting story. I will say insurance covers unforeseen circumstances that are not within your control. Change of heart, as it's commonly called, is considered within the wedding couple's control and is not covered. We did
Okay.
have a wedding, and it was an argument between the couple about the terms of the prenup. That
Oh
wedding
gosh.
was set
Okay.
up and taken down 3 times before they finally got married the fourth time. Needless to say, you could probably guess they're not still married.
Right. No, I can imagine that.
That was a tough one.
Yeah. No, if you're having that much static before, that is sort of the magic. I mean, that's like, we try to ask couples like, listen, if you're having this much difficulty beforehand, if you're having that much noise, that doesn't go away. Nothing goes away. If the mother-in-law doesn't like you, she's not going to like you the day after the wedding. I mean, it doesn't all magically disappear like Cinderella. So I guess one of the questions too, going down that line real quick, if somebody walks away or something like that, or it's a ruined engagement, we decide to break up the week before. I'm assuming you're taking that policy as a couple. So person one, person two takes out that policy. Person one pays for it. Person two backs away from it. What you're kind of saying is maybe that's not covered, or does this person
that's change of heart. It doesn't say who
change of heart?
who changes heart, but a voluntary decision to break up by a couple is not covered. And understand in most situations, it's not a mutual decision. It's always one person saying, "I don't want to go through with this." So it goes back to insurance is designed and insurance is priced to cover unforeseeable situations that are not within your control. The other example I give is fire insurance. You can't see a fire coming towards your house or your next door neighbor's house on fire and call your agent up and say, "I want to buy insurance right now."
Yeah. Yeah. Southern Cal, you probably can. So, we're not answering any calls from Southern California in the summer. That's just not how we're going to do it. So yeah, no, that's interesting. What are some of the other scenarios that couples need to be thinking through that maybe they're not thinking through? I mean, obviously, fire, weather event, things like that. What are some of the other areas, catering, food, dresses, rings? What are some of the other things that couples perhaps need to be thinking about that say, "Oh, I didn't realize it covered that kind of thing"?
Most people can visualize things that go wrong. You get a couple of them. We had a wedding happening in Texas, and the couple was coming from the Northeast, and it was a non-hurricane, non-weather related time in Texas. And they're saying, "Well, we don't care about weather insurance." I go, "Well, you're coming from Boston. What if you get snowed in Boston and can't make it?" And they're like, "Oh, we didn't think about that. It doesn't have to be weather at the venue."
Right. So it could be anything. Yes. Well, yeah, that is an interesting scenario. No one thinks about that. Well, yeah, I'm going to go to Florida. There's no weather. Yeah, that's.
I'm gonna have a January wedding in Florida. It's not hurricane season, but I'm flying out of Boston.
Yeah. Wow. Scenarios like missed flights. How do you sort of handle that kind of thing? That's sort of
missed flights are
now.
tough because you know what? It was your choice not to leave for the airport early enough. You know what? But then you say, okay, there was an accident and the turnpike was blocked, and we left early enough, but the accident happened right in front of us, and we were stuck there for 4 hours. That's something that could very well be covered. The question I get very often is, "Tell me everything that's covered." And that's an impossible question to ask.
Right. That's all day.
Right. Because the insurance policy, the way it's basically written is, if you lose a deposit, it's covered unless one of these scenarios happened, which are the exclusions. So most insurance is saying, we'll cover you if something happens unless it's excluded.
Wow.
So it's nice that it's open-ended like that. But yeah, there are story after things that can go wrong. And, it's funny. People have pretty much stopped asking about COVID. People just, if they mention COVID, they go, "I understand COVID's not covered, but would this situation be covered?" What we see the most questions around, probably more than anything, is military deployments.
Yeah, no. I'm in a military family, and so yeah, I know this. actually did a wedding. My brother, I did his wedding. We signed his stuff a year before his wedding. And we just didn't know. We didn't know. We hoped he would be back for a certain date, and we had to sort of plan around that. But no, that is a huge one. That is a huge one.
I mean, we sell a lot of policies to military families, and we understand it's look. You don't, as long as you're on leave when you buy the policy, meaning that date you have a leave granted. If the leave gets revoked, then the insurance can cover you.
So you guys are sort of a pioneer in this world, and I'm sure there's other products that have shown up recently. Even if maybe COVID was the impetus for some of the creation of these products, but as you guys are sort of a leader in this thing, tell me why you guys are the ones that I need to call, and not Johnny down the street or something like that.
Certainly. Well, I think, the biggest advantage we have is our wedding insurance was designed by a wedding professional, not an insurance professional. So we designed it around how weddings really happen. We're the only company out there that covers, full 3 days of events that people understand. You have a rehearsal dinner on Friday, ceremony and reception on Saturday, a farewell brunch on Sunday, and it covers all three of those events for the same price. Then I looked at the applications that wedding couple has to answer for some of these other insurance companies, and I went through and I just did an exercise. I counted the number of questions on the applications, and on average, there was about 45 questions on our competitors' applications that these couples had to answer. We have 10. I said, you know what?
Wow.
I don't need to answer all of these questions. I don't need to ask these questions because they're not going to change the coverage. So you know what? We designed our website to be mobile friendly, to be easy to use, to be quick. The whole process only takes about 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. Everything is automatically emailed to you. And then, we did some other innovations. We have an AI algorithm that runs on our site that recognizes the venue when you put the venue in. And we have relationships with thousands and thousands of venues across the United States that have very specific insurance requirements. And our algorithm knows those insurance requirements. So you put in the name of the venue, even if you put it in wrong or don't list it correctly, we correct it for you behind the scenes on the application. So when you get your insurance policy, it's correct for the venue and you don't have to redo it. So those are some of the differentiating factors. I can go on. There's one of the big ones is there's something called extra expense. An extra expense generally says if you have a critical vendor go out of business, not show up, and you have to hire a more expensive vendor, we'll cover that extra expense all the way up to the policy limit where other people cap that at 10 or 15%. And I give the example of a week before your wedding, there's a flood in your caterer's kitchen. Caterer calls you up and says, I'm really sorry, our kitchen's flooded. We're not going to be able to cater your wedding next weekend. You call another caterer and they said, yeah, we've got the time, we can cater it. But you know what? There's a 20% surcharge because we're booking our people at the last minute. We're ordering food last minute. It's going to be more expensive. Not only does the insurance pay for the initial cost of the caterer, it pays that additional 20% surcharge.
Wow. So, man, it really doesn't make any sense for a bride and groom to not look at this.
Well, that was the epiphany I had a couple of years ago when I looked at this.
Well, that's the thing. So you come out of that industry. Yeah, if you put 10 insurance agents in a room, they would not have come up with this kind of process.
Just simple and easy. And when you look at it, it's 1% of your wedding budget. I'll go back to the example. You have a $30,000 budget. You know what? Buy insurance, and now your budget is $29,700. Why would you not?
Wow. And so, not to keep giving you hard math, but how many? If 10,000 is the number of policies, how many? What's the percentage of claims? Like, we have something that happened at our wedding that required us to turn back to this policy? You would hope it's zero, but how often do couples use the policy? How often is it used?
It's a little bit of a difficult question to ask. It's a little skewed because of COVID, because we had, 80, 90% of our couples make claims that bought pre-COVID. And it's a number that's not projected or broadcast by the industry because no one knows for sure. It's like how many auto insurance claims or how many fire insurance claims. But,
Right.
for an insurance product to make sense in the pricing, it's usually in 10, 20% of the people that buy it. Some years it could be 3 or 4%, and some years it can be higher. But it's also,
Right.
it's not the quantity of the claims. One claim for $75,000 is, more than a dozen claims at $3,000.
Right. No, that's important. So no, it's not a product though. Oh, this is useless. We're just gonna sit on our shelf and just a waste of money. No, this is this is something that gets used.
It does pay out for real, but you look at the price where it's a couple $100, for a $15,000, $20,000 policy. You can do the math. If half of the people bought it, you couldn't charge a couple hundred. If half of the people made a claim, you would not. The insurance company would go out of business, charging $200 and paying out $10,000 to half the people.
Right. No, I get it. So you are in New York. How are things in New York City?
I am in New York. I've been in New York all through COVID. It was mighty quiet for a while.
I'm sure.
It was almost sort of nice for a little bit where you could ride your bike around and not have to dodge the cars. New York is fully open today. It's not a lot of tourists, but the restaurants are open. The bars are open. Broadway, I believe, is reopening very quickly. I think it's coming up on full capacity, but New York, got hit really hard early, and maybe because of that, the percentage of people vaccinated in the city is really high, and people are ready to go out and drink and party and have a good time and enjoy the city. It's going to be an interesting summer here with everything open, but minus the tourists.
Yes. Yeah, I would assume there's not going to be a lot of tourism, but I would also, you wonder if everybody's just going to come out of I've been locked in a closet for however many months and just go crazy.
They already have.
But with all, so you're probably seeing it. So all the, Broadway and sports and all that. But I guess for us, for you and me in our world, the most important thing is that weddings are back. I mean, weddings are back in, every week. There's no one really thinking about rescheduling further out than 2022. That's a good thing that for everybody in the industry, there's still probably some recovery taking place. I know for our world, we had so much canceled or moved in 2020 into 21. It'll be until 2022 that we're normal, but that is a good sign. So I'm assuming in Manhattan, in New York, that those kinds of events are back full swing, or do you sense that that's still sort of slowly arriving?
It's a little bit slowly because there's a little bit of lag. Part of the problem is no one knew when the COVID restrictions were going to be lifted. And it takes, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to plan a wedding, but we are seeing them coming back full swing in New York. And I think, the biggest thing that we're seeing is weddings are no longer a Saturday night affair. People are having Thursday night weddings. They're having, Sunday brunch weddings. They're having Friday night weddings.
Well, David, this has been fabulous. Where can people find you? What's the easiest way for people to locate you, to maybe speak to you directly, or just to find your company? What's the best way for folks to find you?
Best way to find us is on our website, and the website is eWed. That's EWED insurance.com. There's a phone number there. You can contact them. You can email us at info@ewedinsurance.com. Easiest way is just to shoot us an email or to call the 800 number. Most of the time you'll get me. I try to answer the phone for as much customer service as I can, because I believe, that's the hallmark and the backbone of this business, is offer a great product
absolutely.
and be there to service your customers.
Absolutely. No, and we'll put that in the show notes as well at the end. So, well, David, thank you so much. This has been helpful. I hope it is going to be helpful for a number of my clients, a number of future brides and grooms. Looking forward to making sure that their day goes well. So thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. And thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Man, that was a great conversation. My thanks again to David Berke for giving us some time today. And hopefully that was helpful for you, especially if you're an engaged couple and you are looking at wedding plans. If anything that COVID-19 or 2020 has taught us is that we do need to prepare for contingencies and prepare for just what could possibly happen. So again, my thanks to David for coming on with us today. If you need any more information about us, our website is very simple. It's weddingchaplain.com, all one word. And on that website, if you are looking for a minister, if you're looking for an officiant, we'd love to talk to you, especially if you live in the Pennsylvania, West Virginia, or Ohio region. If you are looking for other services, if you're looking for premarital counseling or marriage counseling, we can serve you, obviously, geographically in those states. We can serve you wherever. We have learned how to pivot in the last few months to doing services online, working with couples by phone. And so even if you have a wedding planned, even if you already are married and you are looking to just do a refresher, one of the things we use is called Symbus, and we will be glad to walk you through that. And so if you are looking for that kind of service as well, but for whatever you need, if you need resources, if you need other episodes of this podcast, you could check out our blog. We have all of that for you at weddingchaplain.com. We look forward to interacting with you there. And thank you for spending some time with us today.